Sabi mo, Pat, wala akong narinig.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to ONBOARD Online Boardroom Discussions, presented by Icon Executive Asia and the Philippine Daily Inquirer. My name is Pat Soyo from Icon Executive Asia, and I will be your host and moderator for this live stream. Just to give you a clue of what ONBOARD is all about, this is a free online conference where you get to have a front row seat to see how business executives decide on the fate of their organizations, especially during a time of crisis. Our main focus today is the state of real estate and how the current coronavirus outbreak affected one of the biggest sectors in the Philippines. Before I introduce you to our speakers, we would like to thank the following sponsors for making this online boardroom discussion possible. Thank you to Mega World Corporation, Ortigas Land, and SM Development Corporation. We also would like to extend our gratitude to the organization that supported us, Wong+Bernstein Advisory Group, Colliers International Philippines, Shoppertainment Live, INQUIRER.net, INQUIRER Property, JCI Manila, JCI Philippines, Subdivision Housing and Development Association of the Chamber of Real Estate, and the Chamber of Real Estate Builders Association, Philippine Association of Realtors Board, and Bounce Back PH. Apart from me, ONBOARD will feature another moderator and two brilliant speakers who are both subject matter experts in the real estate industry. Please allow me to introduce them to everyone. First off is my co-moderator, Tech Samaniego. She is the head of the Special Projects and Supplements team of the Philippine Daily Inquirer. She has been with Inquirer since 2000 and began her writing career as a contributor for several sections, including Science and Health, Property, and Business. Since her appointment as property editor back in 2016, Tech has introduced new themes, columns, and creative executions to provide more interesting and more comprehensive content for the section. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce everyone to Ms. Tech Samaniego.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Pat, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to ONBOARD with INQUIRER Property and our colleagues from Icon Executive Search, Colliers International Philippines, and Wong+Bernstein Advisory. We all know that the real estate industry has had quite a stellar performance in the past decade. It has been an exciting run that earlier this year, during our own forum, we said that it is expected to be sustained this year. However, with this pandemic that is COVID-19, we are now questioning the vibrancy of the said industry. Is it gonna fully dampen the growth as forecasted by experts? And if so, how can we somehow cushion the blow? We hope that with this discussion this afternoon, we will be able to help not only our friend developers, but more so our investors in how to better go through this COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, Pat.
All right, thank you, Tech. Now it's time to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is a man that has over 30 years of experience 24 in real estate, 24 years in the academe, and currently holds position in 25 boards. He's the former country president and CEO of Electronic Realty Associates, the former chairman of the board of the public listed SunTrust Developers, and the founding head of Mega World Lifestyle Malls, the founding CEO of Resorts World Manila, the former vice president and group head for business development of Greenfield Development Corporation, and a former program director for real estate for the Ateneo Graduate School of Business. Currently, our speaker is the executive director of ASEAN Real Estate Policy, the independent director of public listed Resorts World, a real estate consultant for policy and strategy, and the executive director of Wong+Bernstein Advisory Group, an Asia-Pacific-based strategic advisory firm that specializes in family governance, succession, and next-generation leadership. Let us all welcome Professor Eric Soriano. Good afternoon, Prof. Prof, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
There you go, Prof.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Tech. And of course, to my core resource, Joey. And of course, to the thousands who are clearly going to watch this wonderful advocacy of the Inquirer. I do want to dovetail on what Tech just mentioned. We've gone through a wonderful and possibly one of the longest streak of real estate performance that we have had experience for the past 20 years. And all of a sudden, just a few weeks ago, we got the shock of our lives. No? And this particular forum is very timely, very relevant, and stakeholders should be able to appreciate and embrace the discussions today. So I'm very thankful for the invitation, and it's an honor again to do this, but this time it's online, and hopefully we will be able to provide wonderful ideas and snippets of what to expect. But one thing is clear, it's the uncertainty that's spooking the market and unpredictability of the property sector. But yes, definitely there will be a lot of key takeaways in the next hour or so. So again, thank you for the invitation, Mike and Tech.
Thank you for that message, Prof. And let us now introduce our last speaker. Our second expert is the Senior Research Manager at Colliers International Philippines. He covers office, residential, retail, leisure, and industrial segments. He conducts macroeconomic analysis and regularly assesses the impact of economic growth to the real estate sector. And our speaker also handles client engagement through market overview presentations to equity analysts, property investors, and real estate firms. His reports have been featured on national news programs such as CNN, Philippines Market Edge with Cathy Young, ANC, Bloomberg Philippines, and Business World Live. They've also been featured in international and national dailies such as the Philippine Daily Inquirer, Philippine Star, Malaya, Business World, Wall Street Journal, South China Morning Post, Bloomberg, and Nikkei Asia. He's been regularly invited as a research speaker by real estate platforms and industry groups such as Manila Real Estate Boards, Philippine Association of Realty Appraisers, Real Estate Brokers Association of the Philippines, Lamudi, and Hoppler. Let us all welcome Mr. Joey Roy Bondoc. Good afternoon, Joey.
Good afternoon, Pat. Hi, Prof. Hi, Tech. These are uncertain times. This COVID-19 pandemic has really been affecting the Philippine economy, a lot of major economies around the world, and it cuts across all segments, including property. But Colliers has always been providing market insights on how developers, investors should reposition given this uncertainty that we are seeing right now. And we have been very active in providing data-driven recommendations and insights. And we hope that we can share those through this very important webinar organized by INQUIRER.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Joey.
Thank you.
And for that quick message. Now that we have introduced the panel, we will now start with the online boardroom discussions. To our viewers, feel free to join the conversation and don't forget to ask questions. We will be choosing some inquiries which will be answered in the second half of this online discussion. Now, let's jump off with the question that's been on everyone's mind. How affected is the Philippine real estate industry? I think we can jump off first with you, Joey.
Oh, it's really affected. Let me discuss this by segment. For office, we have been seeing less inspection activities for the office sector. So this should result in lower office leasing for the first half, at least of 2020. We're also seeing disruptions not just on the demand side, but we're also seeing disruptions from the supply side because of the work stoppage and disruptions in supply chain operations. We will now see less supply. Initially, we were projecting about 1 million square meters of new office space to be completed in Metro Manila. Now we're down to about 700 to between 780,000 square meters. So that is a 20 to 25% reduction of what we initially estimated. Also, the demand, initially we were projecting 900,000 square meters of office demand for Metro Manila in 2020. Now these are down to about 300, 500,000 square meters. So all those rosy projections that we have initially are now out of the window. Even the residential demand, of course, we might see a softening of prices of leasing all over Metro Manila. Retail, the malls are closed, and the rents will probably drop in the next few quarters. And we're even seeing this in industrial segment where the take up of industrial space in warehouses is threatened again by the global supply chain disruptions, as well as the lower manufacturing investments that flow into the Philippines. Of course, for hotel, we are seeing hotels now closed. So even prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and this lockdown, hotel operators were recording 20 to 30% occupancy. So for residential, there will be some upside, of course, as well as office. For office, for instance, during the global financial crisis, the lease rates dropped by double digit, but this recovered quickly after a year. So that just shows you that if there's a faster recovery of the economy and business activities in 2021, then definitely leasing transactions will grow faster at a faster pace by 2021. It's also in residential. Back in 2009, during the global financial crisis, the prices of condos dropped by 2%, but they quickly recovered by 2010. So that just shows you that there really is an opportunity for further growth, for an upside after a year. Immediately after a year, this pandemic passes. So while there are some headwinds, and this is a major headwind that we are seeing right now for the Philippine economy and property, there will definitely be some positives. And we hope that once business sentiment improves by second half or of 2020, the market conditions pick up by 2021, and we will see the property sector benefiting from this recovery.
Okay. So I would also thank you for that, Joey. And I would also like to throw this question to you, Professor Eric. So how affected is the Philippine real estate industry now? I think, Prof, your microphone. Okay.
Well, what Joey said is very accurate. I think, as I mentioned in the first part, it was a shock for all of us. No, it's probably a bit of a difficult economic situation now. I can backtrack a bit in the '97 crisis, where we also were hit hard. But this time it's a little bit difficult because there have been lockdowns and a lot of travel restrictions as opposed to the '97 and the '08 crisis. So business obviously is coming to an abrupt halt, and it's not. It's just simply, I think, from an economic standpoint, it's no longer a question of whether there will be a global recession. It's a question of how deep it is and how long this will last. So, but if you want to granulate all the issues related to real estate, we all know for a fact that hospitality, retail, leisure have seen the sharpest decline in the past month, 2 months, and therefore some have hardly operated. So if you add some more with the travel restrictions, so there's technically no cross-border transactions at all. So we are seeing here a lot of volatility, and the key operative word here is the uncertainty. We do not know where this is headed. Anything rosy that we can picture for next year is still uncertain. It's a moving target. If this crisis ends early, we'll probably get past this quickly, and recovery will be very, very quick as well. But if this crisis extends longer than 3 months, 4 months, then we can most likely consider a possible writing off of some asset classes in the property sector, like hospitality, leisure, and the like. So it's hard to make bold predictions as we speak. But one thing is clear, like what Joey said, there's a lot of silver lining. Residential is always based on pent-up demand, just like eating. whether we're stuck at home, fundamentally, we really have to eat. Oh, it's like residential. It's the same thing. So office markets can still be robust. We still have a very solid BPO market being set aside the past few months. The BPO has been stable relatively. So it all boils down to how deep this crisis will be in the succeeding weeks and months. But overall, it all boils down also to the lack of preparation for most stakeholders in the property sector. Like what Tech mentioned, we've had it so good for the past 10 years. So therefore, most developers felt that, hey, this can be sustained. So whatever is the outcome, at the end of the day, with or without the virus, we were also heading towards a softening of the market because 10 years of sustained growth was also wonderful, but it had to be softened because that's how economics work. So clearly, my take here is simple. There are many ways to address this crisis, but the most important thing is how prepared are we and how developers will be able to cope and manage the new norm, which is what? Effectively staying from home, working from home, and doing a lot of things. So, so I guess in a nutshell, those are the things that I wanted to dovetail from what Joey and Tech mentioned. Yes, stellar performance, but we missed out on preparing a crisis of even less than this magnitude. So it was more of a shock for us when if the crisis prolongs, that's going to be a big impact. If the crisis will also be managed in the next few weeks or maybe a month or two, perhaps we can normalize it earlier, like what Joey said. But again, everything is a moving target, and we need to analyze and make some full assessment on how we can move forward.
All right. Thank you for that, Prof. Tech, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, we both Prof and Joey mentioned this came as a shock of our lives. The real estate sector has been known to be a vibrant and a major economic country before. Now, given this slight dim scenario in the sector, do you think both Prof and Joey, there are still ways that we can somehow cushion the blow for the sector? And if ever, what measures or strategies can be adopted by both the large-scale developers and the small-scale developers?
Joey can probably
Oh,
express.
okay. So let me start. Yes. Well, I think now that we are experiencing this COVID-19, this is an unprecedented time that we're seeing right now. I think what we will see moving forward is the new normal. For developers, for instance, for office, we might now see them offering, more split operations for their occupiers, for their tenants. So while half of their companies are probably occupying flexible workspace, half are occupying a traditional office space. For a lot of developers, now is the time for them to strengthen their property management capabilities, because it is important to the integrity of the entire building, to the health of the tenants, occupants of that building, may it be office or condominium project. For occupants, for the companies occupying space, perhaps look at aggressively adopting technology. Right now we're using Zoom. A lot of companies are doing webinars. This is my second webinar for the day. So we encourage companies to aggressively adopt technology, and this greater use of data centers, of cloud computing, will now result in these data centers proliferating all over Metro Manila. So again, that is probably a new normal that we will see moving forward. The occupation of office space of these data centers could probably fill the void left by some companies that are using less office space right now. For residential, one of our recommendations for our developers, especially those with high ready for occupancy units, is to come up with more creative leasing schemes. Now we see a lot of BPO companies all over Metro Manila looking for hotels that can accommodate their employees, so that during times like these, they can easily, the employees can easily report to work. So now perhaps it's an opportune time for the BPO companies to look for dorms, halfway houses where they can house their employees. And the developers of residential condominiums should cash in on this demand. For retailers, perhaps a way of cushioning the blow and adjusting moving forward is to implement offline to online strategies. Now is an opportunity for them to tie up with companies that have expansive online presence, e-commerce platforms. Also, a lot of those from the older generation are part of our most vulnerable population, and these older people are now embracing online selling, and perhaps retailers and mall operators should target the senior citizens who are now enjoying doing online shopping. In industrial, what we see is that there's a greater demand for logistics because of a lot of deliveries that we are seeing all over Metro Manila. But moving forward, perhaps it's not just enough that you have warehouses. Now is also an opportunity to rethink your strategies, modernize warehouses, so that you will be able to capture the demand for greater logistics all over Metro Manila. So, these are just some recommendations that we have for developers. How do they move forward when this pandemic wanes, and adopt the new normal that we are seeing right now?
Okay, thank you for that, Joey. Do you have anything to add, Prof. Eric?
Uh, Again, because of the uncertainty, our biggest enemy is really the uncertainty. And therefore, the key, again, operative word for stakeholders like developers would be stabilizing their operations as we speak. They need to stabilize. They need to stabilize their revenues. They need to stabilize their OPEX. They need to rationalize whatever programs and initiatives that they were pushing before this crisis took over, and they have to be very defensive now. Meaning, stabilizing income is important, but also rationalizing the human resource. The number of people, the number of essential contributors to the organization is also key in determining how successful you are when this crisis will eventually slide. So, other than that, there's also a need to address the clients, current clients that you have, uh, making sure that account management is in place, making sure that they are also taken care of despite the crisis. The occupiers of the residential condominiums, the occupiers of the villages, these are clients that have remained loyal through the years. They need to be handheld because at no other time, this is the best time to really reconnect with them. Now, if the virus will be contained shorter than expected, then easily we can recover fast. Like 2008, it was a very, very wonderful bounce back for obvious reasons. Our cash, our dollar reserves were high. Our OFW markets were there to secure and stabilize our cash flow. Bottom line, these things offers a lot of opportunity, but again, the uncertainty can really take us out of the market. Now, if it prolongs, we can expect a longer period to recover, which is likely to be next year. So we're also looking at investments that will be confined domestically because of the restrictions on travel. We're also looking at retailers getting a hit for obvious reasons. The social distancing will not stop even if this will be lifted by the end of the month. This will continue. So cash flow is important. and austerity measures are also critical. But like any economist who would like to put in his expertise, there's also a need to spike and boost the market with what we call stimulus packages. So money has to circulate as well in the economy. So the stakeholder here is the government. There's a need for the government to step into the picture as well to boost demand. And how do they boost demand? There are many options. First, they can simply create a stimulus package. Second, they can lower interest rates, dramatically lower interest rates. So when you lower interest rates, it's going to tempt a lot of potential investors and homeowners to continue buying real estate. Therefore, it will ease the strain of not having liquidity in the market. Third, they can do quantitative easing, which means they can buy bonds, they can buy a lot of things, instruments, so that there's money in the market and therefore there's a lot of circulation going on. That will normalize. You see, this lockdown did not offer any circulation at all. We were not allowed to leave our homes. We were not allowed to buy except for the essential items. And therefore, there was a halt in economic activity, ergo affecting practically the cycle and the circulation. So these are things that are important. That's why stakeholders must band together to make sure that the energy of getting the money out in the market is at least consistent. And this is where the government has to pump prime by doing a lot of things, no? Aside from what Joey mentioned, and aside from what the private sector is going to do. No? So I will be the first one to admit that most of the sectors in the property market is affected. There's going to be a slowdown, but as I've said, there are a lot of silver lining. Residential will probably be the least affected. Office markets, despite the work from home, might slow down, but there will always be a natural tendency to normalize because there will always be bricks and mortars that will consider formal office physical presence. Logistics will be suffering a hit if it is globalized, but if it is domestic demand, logistics will continue, the supply chain will continue. Agribusiness will be a big market for everybody. In short, there's a lot of opportunities that can still be considered. But one thing is clear, and my biggest fear, and I want to express this, the big players will probably be the least affected, the big developers, because they are scaled. That's one thing that is very certain here. They're scaled, they have the cash flow, their portfolio is diverse, they have recurring income stream, so they are practically scalable. My biggest concern are the smaller players, what I normally refer to as the one-offs. They have 1-2 projects at a time, and they are so dependent on a business model that is sales driven. So when the supply, when the water tap stops, what's gonna happen? There will be less sales coming in. They have borrowed money from banks, and then things will be compromised. Price points might be adjusted, so they will have to accommodate potentially more buyers who will be tempted with a lower price point. Margins will be lower. So that is a concern. But the big players, I have no doubt they will recover and bounce back faster. So this is where a lot of, game plans, a lot of strategic intent must be injected to really further and fuel the growth of the sector, despite this temporary setback. So So that's my take overall on what we can really expect in a market that was doing so well and shocked us. And therefore, moving forward, what else can we do?
Okay, thank you for that, Prof. I think Tech has something to say.
Prof, you mentioned a while ago, both you and Joey, that the most that will be affected would be the small to medium size or those that do build and sell. Would you say that it's best to follow the same strategy that the big guys are doing? Like in terms of what kind of model should they now adapt? What best practices from the big guys should they adapt?
Do I? Well, similar to what the large developers do, tech. No, for instance, we are now seeing the major developers also venturing into the dormitels for employees. And as I mentioned earlier, moving forward, this is probably one segment that should see a spike in demand, especially with a lot of companies now trying to house their employees in halfway houses. So I think that for medium-sized developers with significant number of ready for occupancy units, this is one option that they should consider on implementing, especially now that we're all seeing this new normal in the society now.
I think thanks for that, Joey. Prof, you have something to say?
Uh, right now, I think the most important thing is, again, as I want to reiterate, uh, residential market is resilient because of the backlog of almost 6-7 million homes that private developers and the government are having a hard time to supply. But it all boils down to the demographics as well, right? So how do the small developers navigate this crisis? So the first thing is they must start rationalizing the resources now. Residential as an asset class, as I've said, is resilient, but we also have to recognize the fact that with this crisis practically affecting potentially three variables in the residential market: lending, spending, and employment. As what I mentioned in my previous webinars, we can anticipate that mass layoffs will happen. As a matter of fact, ADB highlighted that worst case scenario, we might have to let go of almost 400,000 jobs. So how do you now navigate and manage this? If that will happen, a big fraction of those who will lose jobs are probably amortizing. So they may not have the capacity to pay their amortizations. So what's going to happen now? They will have to restructure their loans. But they also have to survive. They may not have jobs. It will take time for them to look for jobs. So what will the small developers do? They will have to probably look at their net operating margins. They will have to look at their P&L. They will have to look at and be as creative in coming up with wonderful terms in collaboration with banks, in collaboration with other creative marketing tools to woo them in so that they will not default. They will have to think beyond what they're currently offering. So this requires a lot of turnaround work if they want to survive this particular crisis. They may consider, for those who may have not developed yet but started to sell, they may have to consider resizing their units. I remember in 1997, when the crisis hit, I clearly remember some developers had to even resize their units even if it was already constructed. So from 3 bedrooms, they had to resize to 1 and 2, to 1 1 1, even at a certain cost. But eventually it was sold out. So these are things that small developers must initiate while they still can. But operationally, they must be very creative. They must do whatever it takes to mitigate the impact of a dearth in the selling side, because you can expect that employment might also be affected. So that's just one area for the residential markets. Now, for the office sector, the new norm now is to work from home. As a matter of fact, at any one time, 200 million people in the world were doing a lot of work from home meetings. So, what is the upside and the downside for the office sector? They probably have to inject more technology that will further spur a combination of online offline presence. Third, in the 10 years that we have been pushing for these developers to innovate, now by default and by design, they will be forced to innovate in less than 30 days. They have been cutting costs on innovation because they think it is not necessary. It is a cost. It is a cost center. They have no choice now. They will have to innovate. But again, at the end of the day, if they want to keep in step with the big players, they will just have to be more agile and more deliberate, because cash is critical for smaller developers. For the big players, they will just continue to scale their presence and probably rationalize some of their huge developments by simply coming up with a program as to when they will be launching them. But all I understand, for the big developers, most of their projects on Stream are practically sold out. So all they have to do is to rationalize all the next developments that they have so that they can weather this storm in the next 1 or 2 years. So creativity is king, cash is king, austerity is fine, but how to win new markets that might have been affected is also a challenge for these small developers.
Okay. Thank you for that, Prof. No. Speaking of winning new markets, I think one of the questions that is being thrown around in the comment section is more on the selling part. Should the sellers be more aggressive? If yes, how can they do it without appearing callous or insensitive to the situation? I think for this one, we can start off with Joey.
Well, based on my conversation with a lot of developers and broker groups, what they do right now is basically just to get in touch with their potential buyers or investors. They don't do hard selling at this point. What they do is, just to be proactive in touching base with their pool of potential investors, so that once the market conditions improve and we see the pent up demand in the market finally kicking in again, then they'll be able to sell units. I think what's also important is that developers that are able to respond well proactively to their investors during these times of crisis will be remembered when this pandemic is over, and they will likely stand out in the market. So similar to what we saw after the Asian financial crisis and even after the global financial crisis of 2008 and 2009.
Okay. What about you, Prof? Regarding selling, should sellers be more aggressive? Should they be more cautious in terms of approaching people and selling real estate?
Like what Joey mentioned, I'd probably just go for the 3 Ps. No? The product must really be best of breed now. You cannot just churn out mediocre products. You cannot churn out Me Too products. That's not going to work. And and that's not sustainable. So the first one is having a top-of-the-line product. It doesn't have to be very costly, but something that you put your heart and soul and a lot of ideas to create a powerful product offering. The second one is your process. Operationally, you need to create a powerful process that will be so efficient, that will be very proactive, and that will be very responsive to the market now because we have the new norm. Then, the third one is having the right people. Having the right people, having the right team who will promote your product is key now. So, what are the key elements in having the right people? They must be properly trained. This is the best time to invest on training. This is the best time to make these sellers customer-centric. Because if you simply come up with sellers who will just hard sell for the sake of what we normally refer to as offering return on investment, which is practically a gas word, no? It's time to really raise the bar on customer intimacy. So account management is key. Being customer-centric is key. Old, new clients, you need to really focus on that. Because at the end of the day, if you do not have those and you do not properly train those clients, voila, you will disappear in the face of the property sector. So these are key elements. You don't have to hard sell here. For developers, my advice is simple. Be a powerful brand. The brand is the promise of a great experience. So you must cover all of those things. The whole gamut of making customers very happy, extremely delighted that they bought from you. And it all boils down to what? The physical product itself and what we normally refer to as the intimacy of the sellers. When you put all of those together, you have a powerful army of customer-centric individuals. And lastly, inject technology. Technology is still cheap. Do not scrimp on that. As I've said, we've been pushing developers to invest on technology for the past 10 years. Now, they now realize the value of technology. So now, by default, they'll be forced to invest on technology in the next 30 days. So the 3 Ps, people, product, and process. How do you now push the people to be great customer-centric individuals? Train them well, load them with technology, and finally, make them focus on account management and relentlessly push them to be customer-centric. So when you have all of those, I think the smaller developers can pretty much keep themselves up to speed.
Okay, thank you for that, Prof. No, I think Amy has some questions as well, especially in terms of best practices. Amy?
Hi, Prof. You mentioned a while ago that there is a 3 Ps crucial in terms of navigating this crisis that we are currently in right now. So would you say that it's best to just stick to the tried and tested formula of most developers, which is to create large estates, townships, mixed-use developments, because it has proven to be crucial with the current scenario. Second is more than just the location. We are now seeing that really it's the comfort and convenience that's being offered by the developers that's making a killing right now. And then lastly, how important is the property management team now? For
Wow,
those Prof.
those are great questions, Tech. Let me start first with the concept of townships. And I have been pushing and I have been sharing this in ASEAN on why townships should be a non-negotiable model for developers now. Why am I saying this is non-negotiable? As a matter of fact, it's a deal breaker if you don't invest on a township. Because for obvious reasons, it's all about convenience. It's all about security. It's all about calibrating. It's all about everything in unison. So these townships have proven to be powerful models now, even before, but unfortunately set aside. Now they see the powerful value of investing in townships. You know why? Because it is self-contained. It's a city center on itself, but minute, and it's self-contained, where everything is being controlled in unison. So when this virus hit, practically it had its own borders. So it was so contained that it mitigated a lot of things. Plus, the concept of living there and shopping there and buying your essential stuff and even hearing mass inside was a great way to really make the residents and the investors felt so happy with their hard-earned money. It was a functional rather than aesthetic now working in favor of these township developers. No? Kasi nga, the residents were just simply happy that everything was so controlled and contained that you won't see this in other developments that are one-off. So it is important to understand that. Now, I used to head a property management firm during my corporate days. And yes, we were the least recognized. We were the most lambasted in the entire property ecosystem. We were a cost center. We were always being questioned by the homeowners association during general assemblies. I would always deploy people who were property heads, and they would always come back to me and always cry that they were always ostracized for not doing their jobs. Now it's payback time. These residents must now be thankful that the first responders who practically are risking their life and leaving their families and their homes are with them during the lockdown period, right? We've seen on TV developers and the property managers practically staying to secure projects inside townships. So I hope investors and residents would not just look at the ROI, they should look at the qualitative aspect of township development. Even if it's a small township, for as long as the convenience are there, the supermarkets are there, all the essential stuffs are there, residents would now reciprocate by thanking property managers and developers who had the foresight in the first place to initiate all of this. So bottom line, that question now reverberates to me when I was in the corporate world. At the end of the day, the least recognized are now being given the acknowledgement and the recognition that they really sincerely deserve. So residents who are being charged association dues should not complain, because at the end of the day, it's for your own sake. It's not for the developer's sake. It's for your own sake to get the right kind of property managers to manage the buildings.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Eric. I think Joey has something to add as well.
Yeah, I just have something to add on. I agree with what Prof. Eric mentioned on the townships. Indeed, this live, work, play lifestyle really resonates with a lot of people, a lot of property investors. And perhaps moving forward, I believe that townships will be a viable option for a lot of condominium buyers. But I just want to also add a few points on property management. You know, Colliers has a property management arm, facilities management, and our people are very busy while we are in a lockdown and we're stuck in our homes. Some of our people are being deployed and are even staying in the office buildings that we manage. And this just shows you how hardworking these people are, and they could even be, you know, considered as frontliners. Another best practice that perhaps we have to look at moving forward is for the well-certified buildings, LEED certified buildings, to really get a strong appetite in the market. LEED certified buildings will account for 30% of new office buildings that will be completed from 2020 to 2022. And that only shows you how important the demand for LEED certified buildings is. And also, just to add on property management, now is really the time for developers or even property management companies, such as Colliers, to really highlight these property management capabilities that we have, strengthen the management of buildings in terms of sanitation, so as to prevent viral infection and transmission in the future. So all these factors should be factored in moving forward. And these are just some of the best practices that we should carry on, especially once this pandemic is over.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Joey, and also Professor Eric. I just have to cut this short because we're gonna go on a 3-minute break. But to all our viewers, we're still gonna have another segment, the second part, and majority of your questions that being thrown into the comment section are already being considered. And after the quick break, we will be answering some of those questions. Okay, so stay tuned. And here's a word from our sponsors.
And some property is finished here, prices will come.
Okay, thank you again. Thank you very much. Once again, we want to give special thanks to our following sponsors: Mega World Corporation, Ortigas Land, and SM Development Corporation, as well as our organization partners, Wong+Bernstein Advisory Group, Colliers International Philippines, Shoppertainment Live, Inquirer.net, uh, Inquirer Property, JCI Manila, JCI Philippines, Subdivision and Housing Development Association, and the Chamber of Real Estate and Builders Association, Philippine Association of Realtors Board, and Bounce Back PH. Okay, so moving on to the second half of our online discussions, we have more questions waiting to be answered. So let's start off with this one. I think it's I think this is also what's on the mind of everyone. The International Monetary Fund Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva declared a global economic recession during a media briefing last March 27. How is the real estate industry affected by this in comparison to the previous 2008 and to the other previous recession that we had before? I think, Joey? Hold on, I'll unmute you.
It's unmuted now. Okay. I think the property sector really felt the impact of the Asian financial crisis, 97 in 1998, and that was the last time the Philippine economy contracted, meaning there was no growth. We recorded a negative 0.6% GDP growth in 1998, and that was when condominium prices declined at their steepest pace. During that time, we only had condominiums in Makati and Ortigas. In 2008, 2009, I think what also works for the Philippines is that we're primarily a private consumption driven economy. 57% is based on household consumption. We rely heavily on OFW remittances. We're not as exposed to global trade compared to other Asian economies. So that partly shielded the Philippine economy from the global economic shocks. However, even with that scenario, the office segment, for instance, was also affected. In 2009, the vacancy or the lease rate in Metro Manila dropped by about 14%, but this recovered quickly in 2010. So that shows you how the pace of recovery could be after a global financial crisis. Even for the residential, the average price of condos in Metro Manila per square meter dropped or contracted by 2% in 2009, but they recovered and grew by 2%. So that's a complete turnaround by 2010. So this shows you that while the property sector could be affected by these global economic shocks, there's an opportunity, there's an upside that we see, especially once market conditions improve after 3 to 6 months. For the office segment, during the global financial crisis, the overall leasing of office space in Metro Manila recovered quickly, about 6 to 9 months. That's when the BPO companies, the outsourcing companies, started to occupy new space. And as a result, we were able to record a slower vacancy because in 2009, note that the vacancy in Metro Manila was 8.9%, and that is the highest office vacancy that we recorded in 11 years. And we do not know yet what will the COVID-19's impact will be on overall office vacancy. But we hope that we achieve a full recovery by 2021. Prof?
Okay, thanks for that, Joey. Prof, I think this is your third or fourth recession, if I'm not mistaken. I think definitely you have some point of comparison from before.
Because of my been through 3 or 4 cycles.
Yeah, cycles.
Well, this is a different impact because there have been so many travel restrictions and a lot of lockdowns that happen. But I agree with Joey. We apparently are shielded from the global recession, mitigated, if you may call it, because there is domestic consumption, there is domestic demand. I will be sharing also the fact that yes, you can expect our overseas Filipinos to get hit and they might come back unemployed. But generally, no, usually the ones that are impacted the most are the advanced economies. When there's global recession, advanced economies will be the hardest hit. The emerging economies would be less affected, but yes, we can still be hit, but there will be less impact because of the domestic consumption. So just like Indonesia, just like the Philippines, just like Vietnam, we're still emerging economies, and I think we can weather this storm better. Look at the 2008 experience, the global financial crisis. Our recovery was so quick because of the dollar reserves that we had, faster than any, right? So yes, there is an impact, but we can mitigate it because we have domestic demand. So we can practically mitigate the shock coming from the global recession.
Okay. Thank you for that, Prof. I think Amy has some interesting questions that's also being asked in the comment section.
Prof, during our last forum held last January, where Colliers also was one of the speakers, we acknowledged the participation of Pogo players as one of the main drivers of the real estate sector. Um, how do we see this now affecting? I mean, how will this COVID-19 affect the Pogo market?
That's a good question, and maybe Joey can reinforce me with some numbers. But from a strategic oversight, uh, Pogo was there, and we took advantage of the opportunities of Pogo. But it was never meant to be sustainable in the first place, because structurally, it had its own life cycle as opposed to traditional gaming. But when Pogo came in, we also experienced a boom in practically office and residential price points. Values went up dramatically, but now that Pogo has been compromised because of the crisis, we can expect a slowdown. But in lieu of that slowdown, we can also anticipate that BPOs will probably take the cudgels from the Pogo. BPOs has been pretty consistent. It's not churning double-digit numbers as we would normally expect for many years, but it has been very steady for the past 5 years. So yes, there's going to be a slowdown in Pogo. Values can be affected. Rents in residential and office will be normalized, but there are BPOs, there are domestic occupiers that can assume that role. So it was good while it was there, but it's time for developers to prepare post-Pogo. Those that will be affected are those with short rental terms. But those with longer terms under Pogo can still benefit from all of this. So it all boils down on how these renters and occupiers have managed to come in. But clearly, the days of Pogo and the restrictions in China and the recession that's looming in China as well will definitely slow down the Pogo rampage that have benefited the Philippine property sector for many years. So we can anticipate. So that's why preparation is key, and pivoting or course correcting your game plan is important as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. I think Joey also has something to say with regards to
Yes.
Pogo.
Well, I agree with the Prof. Eric. Pogos have really been driving the Philippine property market since they entered the market fourth quarter of 2016. They account for about 11% of total leasable space here in Metro Manila and have really chipped in to higher property values for condo prices and lease rates for office as well as condo for lease, especially in selected business districts such as the Bay Area. However, right now, what we're seeing is Pogos are still operating from their homes, from their condominiums, and we are also seeing these Pogo companies continuously pre-leasing office space. We have a few recorded pre-leasing in Quezon City, in Alabang, and Makati. And the only problem right now for Pogos is that because of the travel ban and the global COVID-19 pandemic, we don't see new Chinese employees here. But we believe that once this crisis is over, we might again see a recovery, a resurgence of Pogo transactions here, especially as I mentioned, we have a few office space that were pre-leased to these companies. I think one strategy post-Pogo, assuming the gloomy scenario for the departure of Pogos, is to target non-Pogo companies. So Prof. Eric is correct. Look at targeting the BPO companies, even traditional corporations that are up for recovery once the COVID-19 pandemic is over.
Okay. Thank you for that, Joey. And Amy has a question.
Heck here, Pat. Anyway,
For tech.
one of the most questions that we are seeing online now is for both Joey and Prof. Eric, how do you see this COVID-19 pandemic affecting the pricing of real estate and yung purchasing behavior of the market?
Yeah, good question. Again, as I've said, the crisis is a moving target. There is so much uncertainty, and therefore it's hard to make bold predictions as we speak. What we can always say now is, if this crisis ends soon, we can definitely recover fast. And price points, if they do change, might just be a fraction. I'll cite one example, for example, in Hong Kong, that SARS, which happened Feb to June or July of 2003, it shaved off around 1.8% of the value of Hong Kong real estate. There was a big shaving off of a particular value in a certain estate in Hong Kong because more than 300 infected persons were residing in that particular estate. So there was a stigma of sorts. But generally, it was anywhere from 1.6 to 2.4% that was shaved off in the price. Now, we are not the epicenter of the virus. In America, perhaps there's a big impact on valuation. You can expect a dramatic drop in values because they also had it so good. It's spring now. There's supposed to be a lot of volume transactions for home sellers and home buyers. But because of what happened, there's definitely going to be a slowdown as far as the real estate market. Here, as I've said, if the crisis abruptly ends in a few weeks, the value will likely not be affected. However, if the crisis extends and prolongs in the next 3 to 4 months onwards, you can expect values to slide. But hey, we are an emerging economy. The good thing about the Philippine property sector is that price points are really, in a way, market-driven. Market-driven in the sense that it is also developer-driven. And there is still a backlog of demand and supply. Backlog of almost 6 million. So therefore, when you put that all together, we don't expect a dramatic drop of a particular area because of the crisis. Honestly, what would soften the market and probably affect values would be the POGO if they are not going to be renewed. And number two, when there is a huge exodus of unemployment, that might soften the market. But if that's not going to happen, price points would probably be leveling off at a certain insignificant percentage.
Okay. Now, we have some questions here with regards to the coronavirus. Because of this coronavirus, there will be a shift in terms of buying behavior, especially moving forward. So, one of our viewers named Rich Castro, do we see a higher trend in Metro Manila in terms of migrating to fast developing provinces in the south and north moving forward as well because of the shift in buying behavior?
Joey can.
I think for the office segment, there will be a greater demand outside of Metro Manila only because companies are realigning, tweaking their business continuity plans. We saw that when it was first the ECQ was first imposed in Luzon. So a lot of business operations had to stop, had to halt. So they probably are now looking at other locations outside of Luzon when they can have alternative sites, alternative locations for their operations. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown, we were already seeing a few locations outside of Metro Manila. We are doing very well in terms of property demand. So you have the likes of Cebu, Davao, Iloilo, Bacolod, Iloilo. Most of the buildings that are within the Iloilo Business Park are almost fully leased. We are seeing a greater demand for office space in Cebu. The English as a secondary language segment is one thriving segment in Cebu. Also, the mid-income segment for housing in Cebu for condominium has also been growing. In fact, if you look at other locations outside of Metro Manila, it is Cebu that records the most number of take-up for the mid-income segment. So that's the segment price from 3.2 million to 6 million pesos per unit. Outside of Cebu, Bacolod, Iloilo, much of demand is still in the affordable segment, 1.7 to 3.2 million pesos per unit. So that just shows you how strong of a demand that there is for a mid-income segment, mid-income condominium housing in Cebu. In Davao, we now seeing prices of condo in Davao at 250,000 pesos per square. And this is really one of the most expensive in the country. In Cebu, the most expensive by Rockall, for instance, at about 250,000 pesos per square. So even before this COVID-19 pandemic and even before companies are rethinking their investment strategies and relocation options, we're already seeing a booming property market outside of Metro Manila. Of course, these are facilitated by the government's push to decentralize as well as develop more public projects outside of the capital region.
Thanks for that, Joey. How about you, Prof?
Yeah, I do agree with what Joey just mentioned. Even before this crisis, there has been a wonderful migration to progressive cities, less crowded, better areas. Quality of life is definitely better, but price points have been really picking up even before the crisis. You see, our economy is very resilient. But what is needed now is to objectively revisit our business model. Titignan natin lahat, no, from all indicators. Come up with risk mitigating measures muna tayo. No? Look at our health of our employees. Tingnan natin. Back to basics. Fundamentally, let's review all the things that we have done and try to rationalize resources. Because as I've said, the biggest enemy here is not the virus, it's the uncertainty. We don't know when this will end, how deep the impact will be. We're fortunate we're not the epicenter. We're fortunate that we had this lockdown. We've managed it well. But hey, there's a second wave. Singapore is another second wave. Japan is a second wave. So we have to do this right. And therefore, it's important for stakeholders to reassess and revisit all of this. Our construction has been steady. Our BPO has been steady. Post-POGO, we have enough to address the slowdown of the POGO. We have a housing backlog of almost 6 million homes. The emerging countryside and the cities there are definitely better. So again, domestically, we are strong. We have enough leverage. But the biggest question is whether the stakeholders are willing to get out of the box and think, because there's really still a market out there. Whether it's affordable market, it's the middle income market, it's co-living, co-housing. There are so many creativities that you can really push. It all boils down is whether your organization is calibrated to face the uncertainty and be sustainable.
Okay, thanks, Prof. I think Amy has a follow-up question. Tech, I'm sorry.
Prof and Joey, no? You've mentioned a while ago, pareho, Cebu, we are seeing Cebu and Davao, Iloilo as an emerging investment hotspot. But would you say that softer yung impact in terms of price points, in terms of effect among buyers? And at the same time, you also mentioned, Prof, yung uncertainty at this time. How can the government come in to somehow address this uncertainty in the Philippine property sector?
Yeah, I would say so. It's a softer landing in terms of prices for areas in Metro Manila. After the global financial crisis, the annual price increase of your condo would be at about 2, 5, 10%. And it only peaked at around 15% prior to the entry of POGOs. When the offshore gaming companies entered the market, we were now already seeing 28% increase. That was in 2019. So we believe that in certain locations where the demand has primarily been driven by POGOs, that's probably the location where we might see the steepest decline. I'm saying that softer landing for areas outside of Metro Manila because, as I mentioned, while we're still seeing 250,000 pesos per square for condo in Davao as well as Cebu, these have yet to align or be aligned with the most expensive of Metro Manila right now, which is what, 550, 600,000 pesos per square. So I think that there's a softer softening of prices or softer pace of decline of prices in our areas outside of Metro Manila.
Okay, thanks, Joey. Prof?
Uh, from a macro perspective, what should the government be doing to help the industry? Again, fundamentally, when there is a crisis, when there are in times of trouble, diba, people would always want to hold on to cash, right? So therefore, what's going to happen? There's a shortage of cash, which is gonna eventually bid up interest rates. So my take for the government is basic. First, I agree with DTI, offer loans to small businesses. Small businesses that have been impacted. You see, the MSMEs are 99.6% of all businesses in the country. When they are hit hard, these are the middle income, you're going to go for a major employment problem. So we had the stimulus package of almost 300 billion. It may not be enough, but it's going to create circulation, money in the marketplace. So what else should we do? As I mentioned earlier, it's incumbent upon the government, and they know what they're doing, to lower interest rates, dramatically lower interest rates to boost markets for people to start investing, to start buying real estate, because interest rates are now low. If the government from 6% can lower lending rates by as much as 2-3% or even lower. In Australia, it's 0.25%. In some countries, practically it's flat. If that can happen, you can expect a resurgence of lending activity. You see, in a crisis of this proportion, as I mentioned earlier, there are only three: lending, spending, and employment. When government puts in the money, they can print, they can do quantitative easing. It will be temporary, but it will create a lot of money in the system. Yes, printing money, buying bonds, anything will also create inflation. But let's focus first on survival. By having money in the system and lowering interest rates, you can practically boost demand. And people will now be confident in sharing their money in the marketplace, either by putting up business, investing in real estate, and doing a lot of things. So when all of those things have normalized, like what 2008 did, like what 1997 crisis did. When these things normalize, then that's the time they can start adjusting interest rates. So that is really what's important, because for now, people do not know what's going to happen to them tomorrow, next week, next month. So it's important that the government, as a stakeholder here, who has more resources, must really lead the way. And that's why I'm pushing for Bangko Sentral to start thinking about it, the monetary board, to start lowering interest rates. If they can lower it as low as 1-2%, you can imagine the resurgence of the economy, because money is circulating everywhere.
Okay, thank you, Prof. No, and I just want to ask this one for the two of you. I think I'll start off with Joey. Maraming nagtatanong sa viewers natin, sino ba ang sa tingin natin ang pinakatatamaan? Pinakatatamaan due to the crisis, due to the whether it's coronavirus, and then of course you add up the recession. Sino ang tatamaan in terms of, is it luxury? Is it going to be the whole?
Okay.
And at the same time, one question from our viewers: what is the outlook? This is from Eric Tan. What is the outlook on the affordable housing segment? Would it be good timing to launch an affordable project soon? So
okay. So, yeah, we're shifting to Tagalog now, no? Okay, magandang tanong mo, no, tungkol sa anong segment yung maapektuhan. Dahil pag sinabi natin na luxury or upscale yan, 6 million pesos pataas. At ang karamihan sa mga bumibili ng mga luxury upscale units, yan ay yung mga mayaman. So, kadalasan binabayaran yan through cash, o kung installment man yan, mas maikli na payment term, no? 5 taon, 3 taon, bayad na yan. At itong mga mayayaman na investors, sila talaga yung may kapasidad, no, bumili ng mga condo units sa cash. Nakikita namin na yung mid-income, no, 3.2 million to 6 million pesos per unit yung maapektuhan, dahil ito yung mga managers, mid-level managers na ngayon na nakikita natin, no, na may crisis tayo, ay tinitingnan nila paano ba nila save yung cash nila para sa mga ibang essential needs nila, no, pangangailangan nila sa tuition, sa kalusugan, gamot, pagkain. So sila maaari yung magbenta ng mga condo unit nila. Ito yung segment na palagay namin na magkakaroon ng pinaka mabilis na pagbaba ng presyo, dahil ito yung tinatawag natin na knee-jerk reaction nila sa crisis na dulot ng COVID-19 pandemic. Kung ang mga condo na ito ay nasa merkado ng 3.5 to 4 million ngayon at nakuha nila ito ng 3.2, malamang ibebenta nila ito doon sa pre-selling level na 3.2 million pesos. Parehas din nung sa affordable, 1.7 to 3.2 million pesos. Marami yung mga pag-aaral na sabi nila na yung OFW market, yung mga Pilipino na nagtatrabaho abroad, ito yung market nila, no, yung affordable 1.7 to 3.2 million pesos. So maring ito rin yung maapektuhan, lalo na kung ang mga OFW ay mawawalan ng trabaho at hindi makapagpadala ng pera sa Pilipinas para sa amortization ng kanilang condo. So ito yung segment, no, ng condo market na palagay namin ay maapektuhan.
Okay, thank you for that, Joey. How about you, Prof?
I think Joey hit the nail right in the head, no? As I've said, I'm going back to the 3 variables, no, on any crisis situation: lending, spending, and employment. So what's going to happen here? Pag nawalan ng trabaho ang middle managers, no, siyempre ang priority nila ay survival and yung basic na pangangailangan. So isipin natin na nag-amortize sila. No, I'm talking in general here. Managers dito at saka OFW. So let's assume these middle managers in general are probably occupying, in terms of portfolio, would be around 60 to 70%. Ito yung bumibili ng condominium, ng bahay, horizontal. Pag nawalan ng trabaho, sabi nga ni Joey, aapektuhan yung cash flow nila. Pag naapektuhan yung cash flow nila, naturally, they will hold back. Pag nag-hold back sila, uunahin nila yung basic needs nila, which might compromise their amortization. sa real estate. So anong mangyayari? The banks will not take it sitting down as well, right? The banks will also enforce their amortization contracts. So it's now going to be a domino of sorts. Now, if it is done in multiples of the thousands, you have a situation where the banks have a huge stake here and makikialam sila, magre-restructure sila. So that's where it's gonna happen. Unemployment will lead to less money out in the market. They will not be spending as much, and then the borrowing will be compromised. Now, what's the silver lining here? Banks will offer lower interest rates to mitigate the impact. Bangko Sentral, Monetary Board will help mitigate the impact by dramatically lowering the interest rates until nag-normalize na. Then, after that, pag nag-normalize na, ibalik lang sa dati para magkaroon ng normalcy. Most of those who bought, dumadaan minsan sa Airbnb, pangbayad sa association dues, pangbayad sa at least dagdag sa investments, they can also be compromised. Kaya all of this requires a very important collective strategic decision between all stakeholders. Ikaw man ay developer, ikaw man ay bankero, ikaw man ay unit owner, kailangan pag-usapan. Now, there was a question, paano yung affordable market? Now, cash flow lang yan. Kung may pera ka para makapagtayo ng 200, 300 single detached or row houses, gawin mo because there's always demand. No? Pag dinaan mo sa pag-ibig, wala namang problema yon. So that would be for me a least affected market. Then the middle income market will be affected, but for as long as the stakeholders can really collectively agree on the best mitigating measure, palagay ko manipis ang impact. It will soften the impact. Tama rin si Joey, pag premium, actually, hindi ko pinapakialaman yung premium yan. Sabi nga ni Joey, wala tayong pakialam doon. You know why? They don't borrow money from the banks. The banks will not be compromised. At saka kung matamaan man sila, mahihiya silang magsabi na may tama sila. Because they will survive. Cash nila yun eh. They will just deposit, withdraw from their bank, and pay the developer. So, walang issue dyan. And besides, that's less than 1% of the premium market. It's not gonna be a big market at all. So dito tayo ngayon mag-focus sa middle. Yung sinasabi ni Joey na anywhere from 3 to 6 million. Kasi that's a huge market. And kailangan alagaan yung merkado na yan ng lahat na stakeholders. Ang affordable housing, kung may pera ka, mauubos yan, mabibili yan, tuloy-tuloy yan because of the so-called demand of almost 6 million that we cannot supply. So, yun lang ang pwede ko sabihin. Tama yung sinasabi ni Joey. He put numbers in all of this. So, let us not really panic. Yes, let us be concerned. But as stakeholders, it's time to really collectively partner between public and private to discuss and come up with mitigating measures so that the property sector will be least affected. Isipin natin that in the GDP, the property sector is almost close to 15%. Malaki siya. Although ang pinakamalaki, a quarter would be tourism. But still, you're talking about almost, 60 to 70 sub-industries that will be affected. So kailangan maalagaan tong industriya. And let's not be worried, but let us be concerned because there's always a silver lining somewhere.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. No? So once again, we have received meaningful insights, data, and strategies coming from our real estate subject matter experts, Professor Eric Soriano, Joey Roy Bondok, and from my fellow co-moderator, Tex Samaniego. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for our Q&A. We will be closing our Q&A segment with closing remarks coming from our speakers. Let's start off with the property section editor of the Philippine Daily Inquirer, Ms. Tex Samaniego. Tex?
Again, thank you for tuning in. And I agree with Prof. The future may seem uncertain, but we are a resilient nation. And I think the industry, the property industry is also resilient because it's demand driven. Siguro I just have an appeal for our developers. I would like to appeal that they continue creating projects that are integrated, mixed use, or the so-called townships, because this will help somehow provide that comfort and convenience that we all need in times of crisis like this. And then I also have an appeal to our home buyers to continue living that dream of one day owning your own home. Because once you have that and once you hold on to that, I think kahit ano pang crisis yung dumating sa atin, we will be able to hurdle it and truly achieve our dream of having our own home. Thank you, and please stay safe, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Tech. Next, we have the Senior Research Manager of Colliers International Philippines, Mr. Joey Roy Bondoc. Joey?
Okay, thanks, Pat. I believe that these are precarious times that we are facing right now. The fact that the United States launched its largest fiscal package yet, and a lot of economies around the world are launching their second, third tranches of fiscal packages to support their respective economies. Just shows you how massive of an impact this COVID-19 could have on the economy, including property. But I think there are tailwinds that we see for office. Again, we might see new normal in terms of how developers build office buildings, how companies use or utilize office space for residential. We might see new uses of condominium or creative leasing schemes, as well as development of more integrated communities to cater to the needs of investors as well as homeowners. Also for retail, perhaps companies should now expand their online strategies to be able to capture the pent-up demand once the market improves, as well as for the hotel sector, line up marketing efforts so that the operators can recapture foreign and domestic demand once the market sentiment goes back to normal, as well as industrial, or as I mentioned earlier, there's a potential for industrial warehousing, modernization of warehouses, which we all need, especially now that we are in a lockdown. I think overall, economists, credit rating companies are projecting a stronger recovery for 2021. It may be a U-shaped recovery, V-shaped recovery, but what's important is that, as shown previously during the Asian financial and global financial crisis, there are opportunities for growth for every after global crisis or pandemic that we might experience. And as Tech mentioned, I want to highlight that owning a house and lot or a condo remains an aspiration for all Filipinos, and this should somehow insulate the demand from the Philippine property market and help uplift the Philippine economy moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that, Joey. Next is, let's hear from our last speaker, Professor Eric Soriano, Executive Director of Wong+Bernstein Advisory Group. Prof?
Let's anticipate a global recession. I think that's as natural as drinking water. We can expect China to probably be the first. Then you are looking at EU and then the US. But as we've discussed the past hour and a half, we are one resilient nation. We are and can be shielded from the major impact because of our domestic market. And for as long as we are prepared to weather the storm collectively, I think it is going to be difficult, but we can move forward. So one thing is clear. As I've said, again, I'm going to be very fundamental. Are you prepared? So do you have your operations in check? Have you done some assessment, some risk mitigating measures? Do you have business continuity? A need to reassess. We're in a super VUCA world, right? Very volatile, very uncertain, very complex, and very ambiguous. And dinadagdagan ko pa super kasi this is the very first time in our lifetimes that a pandemic hit us. So is your business operations really calibrated for the next swing? Are your human resource geared for the next wave? How about your sales force? Are they properly trained? Are they customer driven? Are they intimate to their current accounts? Are they tech savvy? How about your account management team? How about your finance, your P&Ls? And how about your brand communication campaigns? Are they up and about, or have you simply considered them cost centers before? This is the time to start questioning the status quo by thinking beyond what you have been thinking traditionally for the past many years. We have had a good run, 10 years. I think this is a wake-up call for us that things are now going to be the new norm. Whatever we have experienced in the past, we just have to get past that and move over and beyond what we used to think traditionally. So preparation is key. There are many turnaround things that you can do. It's a question of whether you have the resolve to do it. And as a developer, as a stakeholder, are you willing? Because if you don't, forget it. You're not going to succeed anyway. So it's important that housing is a very basic element, and people aspire to own one, whether it's horizontal or vertical. At the end of the day, kaya mo ba to weather the storm? So turnaround is key. Push the envelope. Think out of the box, because there's always a silver lining somewhere. At this point, regroup, get your resources together, get your organization ready for the long haul.
Prof, I think you also mentioned that you're doing this advocacy for small and medium enterprises and small and medium developers. Would you like to expound on that before we go?
Yeah, thank you for raising that. We're doing a lot of advocacies now, but you see, for the past 3 weeks, practically every day I get text messages and calls asking for help and assistance from mostly small and medium enterprises. They've been pleading for advice. They've been asking. So what we did with the office, I cleared it with the board, is push a sort of a mobile mentoring type, where those who want to seek advice will have to donate a very minimal amount. In lieu of money, they can buy books that we will all 100% donate and give it to Inquirer Foundation. So I got clearance that whatever books that are sold, 100% will be given to the foundation of Inquirer, and it will be distributed to the most vulnerable members of society, the senior citizens, no? Whether they will be supported by way of food, by way of anything, but it's 100% donation. Nobody will make money out of it. I said to the board, I don't mind being a prostitute to help companies who are in distress, but for as long as they pay it forward by buying our books, I would gladly help them, because the 100% proceeds will go to Inquirer Foundation. So pretty much it's called the Mobile Mentor. And for those who are still worried, sick about where they intend to go, as far as developers are concerned, who are small scale, call us up. We'd like to help you, but please, out of the goodness of your heart, buy our books so that 100% of those will be given to Inquirer Foundation.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Eric. No, that's a really good advocacy. Thank you for sharing that with us. Speaking of advocacy, Philippine Daily Inquirer is also offering a 30-day free trial of its digital edition, Inquirer Plus. So for more information, you may visit inquirer.com/Inquirer Plus. So thank you once again for being part of ONBOARD, the online boardroom discussion presented by ICON Executive Asia and the Philippine Daily Inquirer. We would like to thank our speakers for today, as well as our generous sponsors, Megaworld Corporation, Ortigas Land, and SM Development Corporation. Thank you as well to the organizations that have supported us, Wong+Bernstein Advisory Group, Colliers International, Shoppertainment Live, Inquirer.net, Inquirer Property, JCI Manila, JCI Philippines, Subdivision Housing and Development Association, the Chamber of Real Estate and Builders Association, and Bounce Back PH. This may be our first onboard online boardroom discussion, but it definitely won't be the last. Once again, my name is Pat Soyao from Icon Executive Asia, and thank you for being on board. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you, Inquirer.
Thank you.
Tech.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joey.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you. Thanks, Joey. Thanks, Prof. Okay na tayo.